The real reason everything is collapsing. You need to be ready. Morgueofficial.
Today we are talking about the real reason everything is collapsing, why you need to be ready to prepare yourself, your life, your consciousness. We're going to talk about why it seems like everything in the world right now is just going through a total collapse and a transformation, and how that can be reflected in your personal life as well. You might be feeling a collapse in your own personal life as we're experiencing a microcosm of the macrocosm, that the impact of as above, so below, etc. This is information that you need to know. It's very important as we prepare both in our personal lives and our perception and consciousness of what's going on in the world right now during this extremely pivotal time in human history. This is a make or break for humanity that's going on right now. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, if you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon. You'll get access to weekly secret videos. Every single week, the secret video that we're having right after this today is called How to Transform Your Mind Using the Power of Daydreaming. So support over there for that. Also, I want to remind you, don't fall for any scams. There's a lot of scammers in the comments talking about WhatsApp or Telegram, pretending to be me. Don't fall for that. Also, there are a lot of people out there trying to spread misinformation and disinformation about us because they don't want this information out there. So just be on the lookout and aware of all that BS going on. All right, my friends, the real reason that everything is collapsing, this is really important as we begin to see old structures of the world starting to fall apart. Now, as we go forward, I am going to be reading some quotes from Knowledge Collective from Medium.com. So I really like Knowledge Collective on Medium.com. I'm going to be reading some of their quotes. And so if you enjoy some of the quotes that I read from them today, go support them on Medium.com. Go give them a follow. They are great. So Knowledge Collective says, in a time where our global future seems very uncertain, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed, anxious, and lost when our lives begin to crumble in front of us. We may not know why our lives are suddenly crumbling and what we should do about it. So that's something that I want you to think about as well. As we look at how the world is really in a state of crumbling. It is. It's not an illusion. It's not just the media trying to feed us negativity or something like that. But the media does do that. It does feed us a lot of negativity. But despite that, there is a crumbling going on because we are going through a transitory period. And you may be feeling a crumbling going on in your own life as you yourself may be going through a transitory period as well. This is why we need to be prepared, both with understanding what's going on a global scale and what's going on with us internally and in our own lives. See, because here's the thing. It's like, just because we see crumbling going on, this doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. What's happening is that old structures of the world are no longer serving the world, and so they're beginning to crumble and they're beginning to collapse. Now, this can cause a lot of issues and a lot of problems. Now, when we look at our own personal lives, we can have a lot of things begin to collapse as well, which means that old ways of doing things in your life may no longer be serving you. Old connections, old people you used to associate with, etc., may no longer be serving you as well. So we can see this crumbling happening in terms of ourselves and in terms of the world around us as we personally go through transformations and growth, and as the world is trying to prepare for transformation and growth as well. But we have to remember that everything is connected. So the world that is going through this transformation is going through this transformation because the people are going through its transformation. So if you think about it like this, much like outdated structures that once served us, that are now holding us back. You can think about as friends that may be no longer good for you, or relationships, or even old ways of thinking, old morality systems, old religions, personal habits, beliefs, behaviors, all these things that are no longer supporting you and no longer adding to your growth. As our planet transitions to a unified planetary civilization, it's important for us to embrace the journey towards a higher consciousness. And we have to be able to let go of old patterns that are no longer serving us, just as the world needs to let go of old structures that are no longer serving it. And you can see that the world has gone through these phases of growth throughout time. You can see, throughout history, different ways of thinking that have come and gone, different governments that have come and gone, different societies that have come and gone. This has happened, throughout history, throughout the world. But what's going on right now is completely different than what has come before, because we're not just going through a different change in government or a different change in power or something like that. We are transitioning to an entire new way of being. And humanity is transitioning to an entirely new consciousness. So this isn't like some time in history or in the past where we just made a small move from, let's say, monarchy to democracy or something like that. This is an entirely new shift in consciousness, to such a degree where it is like this shift in consciousness from an animalistic, instinctual consciousness to self-awareness. Humanity is now transitioning from a self-awareness to an all-awareness, a hyper-awareness. But the problem is that so many people in this world are resisting this change and resisting this transformation. And as they resist this change and resist this transformation, this is why we are seeing such a tumultuous time in the world and a collapse right now, because humanity is not updating. Well, some parts of humanity are not updating its consciousness, are not updating themselves, and they are clinging to the old ways of doing things. And so it's causing this internal division and internal collapse. And you can think of it very, very similar to someone who refuses to grow and refuses to release things that are holding them back. And that what happens is that the ego becomes so attached to old habits, old behaviors, old ways of doing things, and it won't let go of its own identity, who it has identified itself to be able to release those things, to be able to aid in its transformation and growth. So we have to be realizing that even though we are seeing all this collapse going on a global scale, it is because something new is trying to emerge, something new is trying to bloom. Another way to look at it is thinking about a caterpillar that builds a chrysalis, and then as the butterfly tries to emerge, that chrysalis begins to break down, it begins to collapse, and it begins to crumble. But we want to make sure that that butterfly is able to emerge and spread its wings and take off to new heights. And we have to be the ones that enable that to happen. We have to be the ones that facilitate this growth. And we have to realize that this all stems from the mind, and it all stems from from consciousness, because everything begins in the mind. Everything begins as an idea. Now, taking a look here, another great quote from Knowledge Collective says, "At the same time, we're seeing a shift on a global scale. There's an increase in natural disasters, political unrest, and social injustice. We're being called to wake up and take notice of the state of the world, and we're being asked to do something about it." And that's exactly correct. There's no savior or messiah coming. And this increase in natural disasters, political unrest, and social injustice, there's a lot of different reasons for this. When you see these violations of people's rights. We see a lot of violations going on today of women's rights, especially trans rights, a big attack on the LGBTQ community right now, a big attack on people's rights. It's very hard to talk about this stuff during a live stream as well, because there's a lot of words that I cannot say without getting flagged. But I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. Different things going on in the world right now where different religious governments are restricting people's rights in many different countries right now. I'm sure you can think of a couple where that's occurring. Many different wars going on as well, as the old structures and the old systems try and prevent the world from growing and blooming and unifying. And it's up to us to be able to bring that change and bring that transformation. And that ultimately begins with us and in our life. It begins with our own personal transformation. because we can't make a good change in the world until we make a change in ourselves. We have to be well equipped for it. And that means having the power to raise our own consciousness. So to be able to deal with the collapse that's going on in the world, we want to make sure that we are prepared for it. And the way we prepare for that is working on our own consciousness, raising our consciousness. And that isn't some kind of vague, airy-fairy thing to say. What that entails is getting rid of all the structures that are preventing us from growing in our lives and being able to develop that awareness of our own unity with everyone around us. So we're moving from an individualistic phase to a collective phase. And that doesn't mean that individualism is not important. It is. This world destroys your individualism. We want more powerful individuals, but we want powerful individuals framed within a strong collective. That's what it's about. It's not just about the individual, and it's not just about the collective. It's about both. And this world has denied both the individual and it's denied the collective. It has been obsessed with simply power, domination, and control, when we now need to have a growth mindset. And when you see the world is constantly right now trying to push for this new birth, it's going through birth pains. And one of these things that we can see is as an increase in global disasters occur, whether it's global pandemics or global warming or nuclear war or anything like this, this requires us to come together and work as a collective to be able to overcome these problems. Because once we work as a collective, these problems are no longer an issue. When humanity reaches a higher consciousness, nuclear war is not something that we'd have to worry about, because having a nuclear war would be just as dumb as, say, taking a knife and stabbing your own hand. You realize it's just something that you wouldn't do, because you realize that it's only damaging yourself. It's only damaging ourselves, as well as coming together to defeat things like global warming or global pandemics, etc. That just becomes a natural consequence as well. Knowledge Collective says we're evolving from a separation consciousness to an integrated or unity consciousness. And that's absolutely right. Again, that does not mean losing your individuality. That's not what it means at all. It just means having the consciousness to be able to see that interconnected pattern around you and acknowledging it and realizing what that means. So like I've said before, just like with self-awareness, you have the mirror test for self-awareness, where you sit someone in front of a mirror, and if they can recognize themselves in the mirror, you realize that they are self-aware. The test for this new kind of consciousness is seeing if a person recognizes themselves in everyone and the world around them, where every single person and the world itself becomes a mirror. So do you see how that consciousness, new consciousness, naturally leads to a better world? When you recognize and see yourself in the mirror, you're not going to stab yourself in the hand. When you recognize yourself and see yourself in everyone and the world, you're not going to attack another person or do things that will degrade and destroy the world. So, Knowledge Collective says this means we're moving from a state of individualism, where we see ourselves as separate from each other, to a state of unity, where we realize that we're all connected through an invisible web of energy. And again, this is absolutely right. Very well said. I enjoy this individual's quotes very much. And it's again not about losing one's individuality, but embracing the underlying connectivity. So, another great quote here by Knowledge Collective says, we may be feeling disoriented as we move into this new reality, but deep down we know that the crumbling of our lives is a sign of transformation and growth. This collective awakening is an integral part of spiritual growth and evolution, as it allows us to look at life in a new way with fresh eyes and fresh perspectives. As a result, we are becoming more aware of our inner capabilities and potentials, allowing us to create a brighter future for ourselves and the world. And once again, this is absolutely correct. It's important to realize that as we are moving towards a planetary civilization, we're witnessing the breakdown of old barriers and the rise of global cooperation, understanding, and interconnectedness. And this only will happen, though, as we as individuals, raise our own consciousness. Do you see how it's a web, it's a reflection, it's a microcosm of the macrocosm? So just like the world is going through a tumultuous and crumbling time, it can often be the case that you yourself are going through a time that is tumultuous and crumbling. But this is okay if one leverages it as an opportunity for growth and realizes that just like you have the old portions of the world clinging on to the old, your ego is going to be trying to cling on to the old structures in your life that you have become familiar with. And that means whether that's an old job or an old relationship or an old mindset, your ego is going to be clinging on to these things, even if they are toxic and negative for you, even if that relationship is bad for you, even if that job is bad for you, even if that mindset is bad for you. Your ego has become identified with it and you feel comfortable with it. But what needs to happen is one needs to be able to let go of these things to be able to be prepared for a growth mindset and the new. Just like the world needs to let go all of its old structures. It needs to let go the structures of old religions. It needs to let go of the structures of an old and outdated science that believes that this world is just material. It needs to let go the old outdated systems of capitalism, which turns this world into just a commodity, something to be bought and sold, looks at people as numbers and profit margins and the GDP. We need to instead embrace new ways of doing things, such as a new kind of science, which is an idealist science that understands that we can understand the metaphysical rationally and study this world in a way that puts mind and consciousness at the center of reality rather than this idea of dead, lifeless matter. We have to realize this is a reality teeming of life. We have to get rid of a capitalist mindset and instead adopt a teleocratic mindset, a purpose-driven society where money is no longer the focus, but instead purpose is the focus, where we work to create and increase the quality of life of every individual and the collective. And of course, we also need to be working towards replacing religion with the understanding that we are God. I don't even like to use the word God, but we are the absolute, we are divine, and we are here to cultivate a better experience together. So we're really stepping into a new era here where we're leaving behind the old way of doing things. And this new era that we're stepping into is marked by an increased awareness of our shared humanity. And this has and we want to foster a collective desire to create a more equitable, sustainable, and compassionate world. And these are extremely important to think about, sustainable, equitable, and compassionate. This world is lacking in compassion. It's lacking in empathy. It's lacking in sustainability. People only think about the here and now. They don't think about a sustainable future. And then equality and equity is something that is not thought about as well, because that goes hand in hand with compassion. When you realize that the other is not something to fear or to hate, but rather to embrace as different aspects of ourselves, then we want to help everyone be able to have a fair shot at life, because it's really helping ourselves and our experience that we are having today. So the main thing that often holds us all back, both collectively and personally, in your personal life and then our collective life, what is it that's really holding us back? Fear. Fear is what's holding us back. You have everyone who is afraid of the new. They're afraid of what's different because the new and the different are unknown. It's unfamiliar. It's strange. You see all this hate on giving women equal opportunity. You hate on the LGBTQ community, especially trans right now. Hatred towards new ways of thinking, new kinds of spirituality. All of these things are feared because they are new and they are different. And just like in your personal life, fear comes along with stepping away from those things that don't serve you. And the more and more that you cling to and hold on to those things that aren't serving you and leading to your growth, the more your life is going to feel tumultuous and like it's crumbling. I believe it was Nietzsche who said that what is crumbling needs to be pushed. I'm paraphrasing there. But essentially, if something is crumbling, let it crumble. Let it be gone. Let it die. Let it collapse. those things that are crumbling need to be pushed. Now, this is metaphorical, of course. Don't do anything violent or anything crazy like that. We do not support that. But metaphorically speaking, when it comes to ideas and old systems and old ways of doing things, those things that are collapsing deserve to be collapsing and should collapse. So even though it can be a very frightening time and a very scary time and a time full of fear, it's something that we have to realize is the growing pains of a new future. Now, but it's important that we don't be complacent. We must not be complacent. And there's no Messiah coming for us. There's no Savior coming for us. And I read this quote earlier today during the Q&A portion, but I'll read it again because I love this quote so much. Let me make sure that I still have it up here. I don't, but I'll put it, I'll look it up real quick. So this is a quote by Franz Kafka. And Franz Kafka said, "The Messiah will only come when he is no longer necessary. He will come only on the day after his arrival." And I love this quote. The Messiah will only come when he's no longer necessary. He will come only on the day after his arrival. That means that, hey, there's no one coming to save us. There's no Savior, whether that be a Jesus figure or a Messiah figure or aliens or whatever. It's up to us. We are the force of change. We are the force of transformation. And the more prepared we are in our life and working on our transformation and transformation of consciousness, the more that we will be prepared to build that better future. So let me see this other quote here from Knowledge Collective. Says that the global awakening is a shift in consciousness that is happening on an individual and collective level. And see, again, that's a great quote, great insight by Knowledge Collective. Do you see they're emphasizing the same thing that I'm trying to get across here? What's happening on a global scale is also happening on an individual scale. So we have to realize that and work towards improving ourselves and improving our consciousness. And this will in turn begin to help the world as well. Now, it doesn't mean you don't want to shut your eyes to what's going on in the world. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I mean that as you work on upgrading your consciousness, that's going to put you in the proper state and the proper advantageous place to be able to help the world grow. Because as you grow in consciousness, you're going to be in a better place to help others grow in consciousness. And this is going to have a butterfly effect. This is going to have a ripple effect throughout the world. So it's important to know that we're having a journey right now from old structures to new consciousness. And this is both a global and a personal journey that we're having right now. And we want to build a more inclusive, harmonious, and sustainable planetary civilization. That is what it is all about. And we have the power to make this happen. We have the power to make change occur right now. We can do it. It's up to us as long as we acknowledge that, remember, everything begins as an idea. Everything begins as all the old structures in the world that are now hindering us were ideas at one point, but now they must be let go. Just like things that are holding you back in your life, things that are holding in the world back needs to be let go. And it's up to us. We have to make that choice to be able to move to a new world. It's up to us. Nothing is happening without us. We're having this experience right now. So we need to release old ways that are no longer serving us, both on an individual and a collective level, to make way for personal growth on both an individual and a collective level, and not let fear get in the way of transformation. We don't want to fear the new, and we don't want to cling to the old. We need to release the old and embrace the new and give birth to the new. So as that chrysalis begins to crumble, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to celebrate. It's something to let collapse and let be destroyed, as we are then able to spread our wings and take flight to a new future. So don't be afraid, my friends. Embrace the change, embrace the transformation, and together we will build that new future. So As always, my friends, please like and subscribe so that we can share this information and spread it, because we are having that ripple effect. That's what we're doing. So spread this information, tell people about it, work on yourself, help people understand what's happening in the world right now and how we can change things and make things better. If you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon. It helps out a lot. You get access to weekly secret videos. You can also help out by hitting the join button right below this video over on YouTube. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone that supports on Patreon, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Maria, Joel, Fairies of Venus, and Fashida, and everyone else. Thank you very much.
Spiritual News Television. AA Creation 911.